Greetings and welcome. Iran sits near the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil passes. Welcome again, and let's see how the war in Iran is affecting Africa. Any threats that traders face causes a lot of panic, as we all know, right? And this may cause prices to increase even before supply is disrupted. So for Africa, the fuel prices will rise, making transportation costs increase, food prices to increase, electricity to increase, and also the government fuel subsidies to become unsustainable. What does this mean? This means that inflation will start creeping in to the already struggling African countries. Even the oil-producing countries like Nigeria or Angola may suffer because the refineries are still weak and young. They still import this refined fuel, and the currency depreciation also is a risk. The most underrated impact is the food security crisis. So Iran, as we all know, is going through right now some chaotic stuff, but these guys, they produce fertilizer and petrochemicals which are used in agriculture. So the fertilizer prices might shoot, who knows? And again, shipping might be disrupted, as we all know where Iran lies, in the shipping route. So this might delay the grain imports from reaching their target countries, and inflation may again rise, driven by, these farm inputs being costly. Countries like Egypt and, Somalia and some of the West African countries, they might find themselves in in not a good place because they import a lot of food from Iran, things like wheat, rice, and also fertilizer. So this can result to higher food prices in these countries, and also hunger, maybe protests, and if people are hungry, expect a lot of instability. This pattern already happened during the Arab Spring, so it's not a new thing that we are talking about, and also during the Ukraine Russian war, which started in the year 2020, So guys, even if Iran is not fighting in Africa, its allies and the rivals that it has, they are always somewhere near, the operating nearby. So this conflict may spill, who knows, into the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and perhaps the Arabian Sea. So the ships will be rerouted eventually to South Africa because of this, And talking about the effects that Africa will face, There might be delays even at ports like Mombasa and Djibouti, even in Durban, South Africa, because of this new ships coming after, being rejected from the other route. This means higher insurance. It means slower exports, like for a country like Kenya, maybe. Things like tea and coffee and these other things and minerals, they might be delayed because of this, translating directly to reduced revenues by the ports. So East Africa is very exposed if this thing continues. So when global wars escalate, investors move money to quote unquote safe assets like gold, and dollars. African currencies are weakened, by this. So what you may ask, what is the effect for this? But the truth is, there will be budget cuts, reduced social spending, the taxes might rise, obviously, and there will be a lot of pressure from the IMF. Iran rarely fights directly, it uses the proxies, its proxies. So in Africa, this means that there might be support of these, armed groups. We've seen this with groups like Hamas and the rest. But in Africa now, armed groups might rise, and they will be given weapons, trainings, this intelligence and all that. And the countries at risk include Sudan, the Sahel region, Somalia, the Horn of Africa, and mostly the Red Sea coast, which Egypt is host. This may bring a lot of complications in terms of peace and missions, maybe like the UN doing this stuff, like management of security and things like that. And the AU might have to put up like a security force to deal with this issue. So let's look at how Iran's conflict intensifies global power rivalry. Countries like Israel, what they want in Africa is diplomatic backing. The US usually wants to contain Iran, through it might even use Africans to do that, believe it or not. China always is about their stability of trade and everything. Russia is about, influence and arms. And it's very terrifying that the African governments may be pressured, to align themselves in certain ways in order to do this stuff, things like military cooperation and port access and security. There's a lot of stuff involved in this. So this war might be far from home, but it has a lot of negative impacts in the long run if it continues. The Iran conflict has these religious and ideological dimensions that involve their supreme leader and all this, but also low key, like behind the scenes, the Sunni and the Shia, they are always having these tensions. And these tensions may spill even into African Muslim communities, and extremist groups, they can exploit the Middle East, to recruit and all this. So local conflicts may get reframed as a global struggle, which is very dangerous, a very dangerous idea, because it will increase radicalization and, which may topple down governments, It's a very, very, very risky affair. So let's talk about when the Middle East, they have these wars and they are dominating the headlines about this. Usually the donors who are supporting and giving attention, they shy away. Humanitarian aid and funding for Africa always declines, and the issues of refugees, I will not even talk about it because it is terrible, and this is war in the Middle East, So Africa often becomes like this, the silent casualty of global conflicts, which is unfortunate, guys. But not all effects are negative. Of course, there is some opportunities. Yes, there are some, because higher oil prices at least help a few exporters in the short term, because when the oil prices are high, at least they can be able to sell their oil at a higher price, and at least Africa becomes more important, as I talked about earlier. When these alternative shipping routes may come, the African ports might get this business going for themselves, and also Africa might get strategic partners from this whole, not everything that happens is so bad, but people might even start pushing for like more regional trade, more local food production, and more renewable energy, so that we can start sustaining ourselves as a continent. So it will at least build this strong governance, So Africa is not fighting the war or enduring these protests, but it is paying the prices indirectly. Low key, they call low key, we are tunakapitia yani. Low key, we are, there is a problem somewhere. So even if the conflicts are very distant, but areas pertaining to prices, politics, security, hunger, and debt will always hit home, either one way or another. So you learned something new. Comment down below, share this video, and give it a like. Thank you, and see you on the next one.